I want to thank you for being willing to do this, and your church family does also. Each one of you have had different walks in life and different experiences, and today we're going to glean from them. So you're going to help all of us as dads, and the ladies too, I'm sure. Okay, so same questions for each one, and Mick, we'll begin with you, wise one. Okay, first question to you, Mick, and don't forget to hold your mic up close so they can hear you. Okay, Mick, what does it mean to be a father? To you, what does it mean to be a father? It should be on. Yep.
Well,
up here. Yep.
I'm old enough I qualify for a teleprompter, so I'm the only one that's got it, all right. What does it mean to be a father? I'm still learning, but a couple of weeks ago, I'll repeat this, a couple of weeks ago at Ivy's wedding dinner, asked me to pray, and before I did, I told him, I said, look, having children is kind of like going crabbing. You never know what you're going to get. And but you have some good times and bad times. End of the year, you look at all of it, the good and the bad. I don't think in almost 60 years, I don't think I've ever had a year that I went behind. So the good always outdid the bad, and I would do it all over again. And being a dad is challenging, adventurous, educational, happiness, fear, anger, but the greatest of all is love. Yeah. And I remember with my first one, I was 20 years old. And I think Linda was in labor 17 hours. We're up at Elizabeth City. And I think it was about 11 o'clock at night that we left to come home. My mom and dad was there, and so I was in the back seat. And we were crossing the Elizabeth City Bridge. And I had the weirdest feeling coming over me. I'd been a teenager. I'd started crabbing in my late teens. In the summer, after every day of crabbing, I went surfing. And I thought, this is the weirdest feeling. I couldn't explain it. But I was getting ready to take a journey that I had no experience in. And I was a little bit fearful. And the first 4 or 5 years, now Linda told me not to be long, but I'm not going to be like these preachers that tell you 3 or 4 times they're getting ready to close, so I'm going to keep it on.
I hear you. I got it.
First 4 or 5 years of my marriage, I was still young. I wasn't saved. Now, I got saved originally at 9 years old in this church. My parents did at the same time. And we had many, many revivals every year. And I was back and forth a lot, especially during the teen years. And later teens, early 20s, first few years of marriage, I wasn't saved. I hadn't prayed a prayer in years. I went to church once a year on Easter. That's the only time. But I had just moved in the house I live in now after about 3 years of marriage, I think it was, maybe 4. And my first son, Mickey T., was a year old. Brother Denton was the pastor. And I come home crabbing one day, and he'd been sick all night, and he'd been throwing up constantly for about 17 hours. I think Linda got saved by that time, and Brother Denton came over, he prayed, he said, and he looked at the condition. He was getting limp, weak, a 1-year-old baby, and He said, if I was you, I'd take him to the hospital. So we took off, went to Elizabeth City, called our doctor. That was our baby doctor there. It was a weekend. And for some unknown reason, he wouldn't come. So we took off for Norfolk, went to Norfolk General. I think we were in the emergency room till about 11 o'clock that night before they ever saw him, and he was like a dish rag. I thought he was going to die. So I finally, maybe 1 or 2 o'clock, I went on home. Linda, I think she stayed there with him. And I remember the next day coming back, I think it was a Sunday. I walked in the hospital, got in the elevator, and pushed the button. And I looked up. And I said, God, if you'll keep my boy alive, I'll turn to you. That's the first prayer I'd prayed in years. And I don't know how serious I was, but God heard it. And he thought, well, here he comes. So it weren't long that I got saved and we started our journey. And we raised our children in church. And that was the beginning of a good life.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Mick. I never heard it associated with crabbing, but that's good, right? And you see how God was faithful. All right, Jay, what does it mean to you to be a father?
Well, mine's going to be short and sweet compared to his, so. And I'll have to stay on script there. So, what does it mean to be a father? When I first read that question, the word guide popped up in my head. To give guidance. I wrote a little list of things. To show love and care, be a protector, provider. Most importantly, inspire, and how to be a God-fearing man. A person who instructs, imparts, invests time with, devotes, and one who shows empathy, unconditional love to his child or children. Ephesians 6:4, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Boy, I wish I'd done all those all the time. I'm grateful that he's given me two beautiful children, and they've turned out a lot better than I was. And I've had several fathers, father-in-laws, people, men of God that have, especially my grandfather, I have to bring him up, that taught me about what being a father was, of course. And so that's what it means to be a father.
Good. A guide. Thank you, Jay. And now, Leish, what does it mean to be a father?
Well, my wife gave me something this morning. Father, functioning as the head, earning respect. You know, and to do that, I think, you know, just because you make a donation in the creation of life doesn't make you a father. There's a lot more to it than that. To be a father, I think we need to follow the example set by our Heavenly Father. You know, unconditional love, unconditional support, but also a protector, someone that would defend, you know, their child like our Father defends us. You know, it's unconditional love, just like our Father has for us. That's what we must mimic in raising the blessings that He bestows upon us and our children. That's what fatherhood means to me, is mimicking our Heavenly Father.
Good. Good, Loish. Our defender. It's good. Matt?
So I felt like anybody can make a kid, but it definitely takes a special man to father a child. For me, it's a full-time job and my responsibility that I owe my kids, because they didn't ask to be born. You know what I mean? Like, so it's definitely a responsibility, a job for me. I mean, they're my priority. I just want to be selfless. I want to love them. I want to be strong for my kids. I mean, I want to be loyal to my kids. I don't ever want them to feel like they're on the back burner, and that, you know, life can get in the way of work and stuff. And like, I don't ever want them to feel like daddy's too busy to hang out with me, or daddy couldn't do this, you know. I want to support them emotionally, financially, spiritually, the best way I can, teach them right from wrong. I can honestly say with my kids, there's a level of love that I've never felt before. It's just different, man. I mean, I want them to know that I'll always be there for them, no matter how old they are, and as long as I'm breathing, I'll be there, you know. And I can honestly say that I would die for my kids. Like, I would sacrifice myself like Jesus sacrificed himself for us. You know what I mean? Like, I honestly would. And it's more than just a name to be a father. So, like I said, it's everything I said and more.
Good. Good, Matt.
Yes, sir.
Good. Mick, what is a memory you have of being fathered that would come to mind?
Well, with 5, it's hard to pick one out. But probably one of the biggest ones was Christmas Eve, putting toys together for 5 little young'uns. It always brought the worst out of me. And it was a task. And my favorite age, I would say, probably was always between 3 and 5 for some reason. I just cherish that age time of them. Seemed like 5 when they started getting ready to go starting school, you started losing somewhat of an attachment with them. They got other interests, and they began to grow up and started to find their own way in life, you know, in a little way, but you knew it was going to progress. And always, for years and years and years, my children and me were on the second row every service. When I say every service, you had revivals almost nonstop all the time. And they were in every service every night. I made them. And that can create sometimes some rebellion in, you know, children, people, really. I mean, you're under a forceful hand. Back then, it was more of a conservative atmosphere. I'm not condemning anything today, but from my children back, it was like it was a different world than it is from them up. And so some of the things I say, maybe some of you wouldn't understand, maybe not agree with, but that's the way we were. We didn't know any different. We did what we knew to do. And I don't know why, but Dustin always seems to be the focal point. I hope he's not listening this morning, but he's the starting point on some of these things sometimes. And that was always the answer. When before he turned 16, he ran away from home. And it's like I died. I had lost control. I wasn't the father that could fix and do and help and make everything happen and take place in the family with the children. And that's a learning process for parents too. And you have to learn how to deal with it and how to live with it. Because that's what they're hidden for, is adulthood. And this is some of the things that makes them an adult, is cutting the strings, and sometimes it's hard in hard places. And I was just devastated. But what the devil meant for bad, God will put his hand in it and he will bring good out of it. And something took place in my life during that time period that changed my life. And you won't understand this unless you've ever experienced this. And it wasn't for any of y'all, it was for me. And God does things in the weirdest places sometimes. He don't always do it at the altar, or on the church bench, or even in your prayer closet. He can do it driving down the road. He can do it in your boat, at most unexpected places and times. He's always there. And me and Linda going up to Daryl's to eat supper to try to get some, not just food, but relief from the pressure we were under. And I sat down and was waiting for my food, and it was like God took his hand and opened another door in my heart that I hadn't had in the past. With all the church and services and preaching and teaching and experiences and all, I come from a conservative religious background. I don't know how to explain that. I'm not going to go into it, and for some way, he opened my spiritual eyes, and he even kind of spoke this in my spirit. I'm going to enable you to see other people the way I see them, and I'm going to let you see yourself the way I see you. There is none righteous, not one. We only have one hope, that's the righteousness of Christ. Since then, I've had more mercy, more grace with other people that were, if you want to say, wrong, failed, whatever, because I realized that God sees my failures. Even though I'm saved, he still sees my failures, my shortcomings, and all that I really am. And so that healed something and made me able to be a different Christian. And if you've never experienced that, you won't understand it. But God had to do it. And so, when I said from my generation, or my children's generation back, what I'm getting ready to say was the way things always were. We gave children spankings, whippings, lickings, whatever term you want to put on it. It was normal. It's what people did. And especially in church, you got preached to a lot of times, spare the rod, spoil the child. And so you were expected to correct your children with spankings most of the time, right or wrong. And let me tell you, we're just at home, in school, the same thing. They would be lined up after recess, after lunch in the hall, waiting for their turn. And you could hear it. I never abused my children. I don't know if I ever left a mark on them or not. I didn't want to. But one thing I did to my children that might be different than anybody else, I don't know. When something took place, something happened, I would not spank them right then, because I was angry. I was mad. I did not want to give them a spanking in that condition, because I knew I would be satisfying my anger and my frustration on them with a spanking. So I would tell them, maybe you'll get it tomorrow or tonight or whatever, when I'd processed it, when I'd calmed. And so the spanking they got was not anything abusive or anything like that. And I remember, you're going to love this one, my oldest, my daughter, Tiffany. She got her last spanking when she was 18 years old. I was sitting out in the yard. It was hot, July, sweating, working on a crab pot. And I could hear Linda and Tiffany in the house going to it. And it was agitating me. And finally Linda hollers out there, you got to come do something with her. She went upstairs. I went upstairs. I told her to lay over the bed. This is the only one time I've ever spanked any of them in anger. But I still did not do anything out of the way. I give it. I turn around and walk out. She jumps up and starts again. I said, lay back down. I give her another one. I start out. She jumps up again. I walk downstairs out the house. I walk by Lynn and I said, I give up. That's the last spanking you get. So,
She
can
won.
you imagine spanking somebody that pretty? She loves me more than she does her husband now. If Mark ever hears this, I was just kidding, Mark. But she would do anything for me. So,
Good. All right. Thank you, Mick, to be fathered. Jay, a memory you have
A memory.
of being fathered.
Yeah. You made it easy on me.
Hold your mic and hold it up close.
Yeah. Thank you. What is a memory I have of being fathered? Well, I had some highlights growing up, being fathered by J.M. I think the first one was shooting my first duck. How he orchestrated it. There was a bufflehead living in Toby's ditch, and on a bad day, he took me. We walked through the woods, and I think I was 6 years old, and I shot my first duck. I'm just glad I didn't miss. Memories of catching speckled trout at Duck Island are dear to me. Whew. Watching him fix my motorcycles after I'd break them. He'd run me out of the barn, say a few words. That's why I'm not mechanically inclined. I blame that on him. And then he whipped me one time good for killing crabs in Ralph Wayne's shedders one time. That's a memory I have of being fathered. And my fondest memory of being fathered was later in life when he called me on the phone to tell me he loved me. So that's my memories I have of being fathered.
Good. Good. Okay, Lish, memories of being fathered. If you will, hold it up close, Mike. Is it on?
Yes, on.
All right, hold it up close so they can hear you back.
All right. You know, growing up, things were different in this area back in the, I'm going to tell my age, the late 60s, early 70s. You know, my father was a commercial fisherman, and anytime you wanted to buy something for the business or even medical visits or whatever, you went to Elizabeth City. I mean, there was no commercial fishing supply stores around here back then, you know, and it was a day trip. And I can remember it was special because he included you and took you with him. I mean, you know, life was different. You had to go out in the morning and make sure you swept out the car or the pickup truck because you didn't have air conditioning and the vents were going to be open. But he included us as children in what he had to do. He knew just where to stop at every filling station that had cold bottled Cokes, and you know, it was a special treat, you know. And I have pictures home. He was caretaker at Duck Island that Jay mentioned one time, and there's pictures of where he took us down there and included us in that when he'd go down and check on that building and stuff. I mean, just, you know, my memories of being father was because he included you and you felt loved when he did it. You didn't feel like it was out of responsibility, that he actually wanted to spend time with you.
Yeah, good conclusion. Thank you, Lish. Good. Matt, memory of being fathered?
My memory of being fathered was that, my dad was always there. And like he was always present in my life. Pick me up from school. He'd, take me to eat, come home. He helped my homework. He coached every team, like baseball, football. Like he was always the coach, Never missed a game, and not just stuff like that. Like, if I was down, Dad would give me a pep talk, pick me up, and if I was sick, he'd take care of me. And, you know, I was very fortunate. My father didn't hold back. He always told me he loved me, you know. Like, he didn't hold back his emotions, which is great, you know. And him just being there was great. And it's still like that to this day. And I can recall when I wasn't living right, you know, highly addicted to drugs. Every time I went to detox or rehab, like, Dad took me. Dad picked me up, you know. And he never thought different of me. And I know at some points he was upset with how I was living, but, I mean, there wasn't a time I couldn't call my dad. And actually this last trip in 2017 when I went to the House of Prayer, he drove me, and it was a quiet ride. And I just remember before he left, he started crying, and I'd never seen my dad cry, but maybe one time, and it was just a couple sniffles, and he just said, "You got this, buddy, and I love you," and that was it. And I don't know, my dad's just a solid guy, and him being present for me, is definitely a good memory. And with that being said, you know, I look at Isabel, and I hear, you know, I see her first steps. I hear her say her first words, and her laughing and clapping, and then I think about Noah, how I missed out on so much at that age. You know, for those who don't know, like, I left Noah when he was about 4 months old. I just couldn't kick the habit. I was selfish. I didn't want to be a dad. So I missed all that. I missed all that stuff. And it's tough, you know. But I try not to condemn myself for it. You know, with a lot of prayer and just the restoration power of God in 2018, you know, that relationship got restored. Like, yeah. I got my son back in my life.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
You know, but, you know, I see him every other weekend. He loves coming down here. Haley's family's great with him. I mean, I'm just so blessed. And if I could go back and change anything about that, I know it sounds crazy, but I wouldn't. The path of destruction, you know, it got me out of the basement and into the penthouse. You know what I mean? That it's just the way it was, you know. And I don't want to miss anything for my kids. I want to be there for them, be present through the good times, you know, the bad times, happy, sad, all that stuff. So there you go. Being present. That was a memory I had from my father, him just being there. So
good, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Remarkable what the Lord has done, and thank you for your transparency.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yep.
Thank you. All you men. Okay, Mick, we're back to you on number 3. What's the best lesson or advice your father gave you or taught you?
Well, my dad was kind of like me, more quiet and reserved, I guess, is how you would describe us. But I remember about 10 years old, my dad had the crab house there at the foot of the bridge, and at 10 years old, I asked him for a summer job. I got one, 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. But in life, he never pushed me. He never tried to persuade me. He never tried me to make me do these kind of things. I guess I've always just been self-motivated, and it was for, say, 30, 35 years, I worked shoulder to shoulder with my dad all the time in everything that we did. Crab house, the dock. I eventually went crabbing too and added that to it. And I've never been criticized in any way, even if I was short in something, you know. If I only did 90% of something, he did 110, I never knew it. He was that type of person. He wouldn't slam you or whatever and say things. He just was that type of person. And except You asked for one time. When I was about 16 years old, we did have a conflict one time, sitting around the supper table. And I'm going again from my youngest generations back. As a child growing up in Wanchese, you never left Wanchese most of the time except for Saturday to go to Manio to Tom Russell's and get a haircut. That was a requirement during those years of growing up in the culture. Haircut every Saturday. And a haircut was a real haircut. You had to be sure there was skin showing all the way around. At the top, you could wave it with Vaseline like Elvis, you're all right. But the Beatles came out when I was about 16. They came over here to this country. And they got the girls chasing them. So you know what the boys do. So my hair weren't much longer than what it is now. And sitting at the supper table one night, he said, "Get a haircut." I said, "I'm not getting one." He said, "You are." I said, "I'm not." And I had in the back of my mind what I was going to do. I said, "Well, I'm leaving home." I was going to go to Portsmouth, Virginia, and show up my grandmother's front door and say, "I'm coming to live with you." So I got up. He said, "The car's in my name, don't take it." I had a car I'd bought myself, but it was in his name, his insurance. So I weren't a thumber, and that took care of that.
You got a haircut.
I got a haircut.
Okay.
But I remember when he was dying, about the last week before he died, he got so weak he was laying in the house in the den on the couch. That's about all he could do then. He couldn't even hardly raise up. And I was in there one day sitting across the room in the chair, and he raised his head up, and he said, "I'm really proud of you." And it shocked me. You know, culture back then, you didn't give out a lot of compliments. You were glad, happy, all that, but you just didn't go that direction. I thought, why is he proud of me? I'm a crabber. I've done nothing but work hard all my life. I haven't really accomplished anything. But I remember Linda said she told him a few times he was really proud that we'd had all these children to carry on the family name. And I thought, well, maybe that's it. So, young fathers, if you want to make your father happy, step up the game and put some more chairs around the table.
Okay. All right. Okay, Jay.
What is the best advice or lesson your father gave or taught you? I remember riding around Wanchese one day. He told me not to trust anybody, not even him. And he said, if you want something, you're going to have to work for it. His lesson that I think I saw more than anything, he didn't have to say anything. It was the way he carried himself. I admired that the most about him, and how others, men and women, spoke of him. That was enough said right there.
Good. Okay, Elisha, that's a lesson from your father.
You know, my father had a major heart attack when I was still in high school, and it changed his life. You know, he was just a working man, no substantial savings, no medical insurance, so the bills were high. But the community stepped up and covered them bills. You know, and it really, and his relationship with God changed. He became a lot closer. He was always a godly man, but it really drew him closer to him. You know, and I saw he started embracing biblical principles of sharing what God had blessed you with. And he gave to the community. He gave to anybody in need. And the more he gave, the more he got. You know, honestly, the more he received. And that weren't his motivation, but that was just the blessing that God it gives us for being obedient to his word. And he drew closer to the family. He started having family gatherings that Mama had wanted their whole marriage, and he had opposed, and all of a sudden she said, I was tired and wore out, and he started wanting to bring the whole family around for picnics and gatherings. You know, so he showed that putting God first, you know, and giving to your community and those in need were important, you know, and embrace your family and let them know you love them. I mean, that was two things that he really showed me and that I learned from him.
Good, Lois. Yeah. Thank you. Matt?
My dad always used to tell me just to hang out with the right people growing up. You know, keep good company. Kind of like, you know, like you show me your friends, then I'll show you your future kind of thing, you know. Unfortunately, I never listened to his advice, and I didn't hang out with the right people and started going on the wrong path. And you know, I'm not blaming other people for my problems, but surrounding myself with that negativity definitely didn't help. And I remember when I was in my mess, Dad always saying,